Thank you, Mr. Blumenauer.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the frank and clear testimony that you are giving us in terms of some of the complexities that you are facing. I know I had similar feedback, but frankly not as eloquently from some of the businesses back home of late. I also appreciated your clear and unequivocal statement about playing Russian roulette with the debt ceiling. I hope that we've got all sorts of things we can argue about around here. We've got lots of leverage points that we can take hostages and push each other around. I hope that this is one that isn't in that category. And your testimony, I think, helps add to the record that maybe will make that a little less likely, and I appreciate it. And I think you've made clear that you've got to deal with the reality. I think, Mr. Rapp, you talked about making investments based on what the costs are going to be for you, not the aggregate, but what the cost will be marginally for the deal that you're looking at posing problems. One of the things that you've started to get at, and I'd like you to elaborate on, because you've been clear, you're not interested in draining the Treasury. You understand that there's investments, and several of your businesses would benefit, for example, if we were doing a better job of investing in infrastructure and some of the user fees that are worldwide and we used to do here. But, you look at the data, we're not a high-tax country compared to the other developed countries around the world. All the information suggests we're at the bottom end. That France, that you mentioned a moment ago, has much higher total taxes. We put aside for a second the personal income tax, but Mr. Hayes, I think you were starting to get into the value-added tax, which is a glaring omission. All our competitors have a value-added tax, hard to evade, reasonably simple to administer. People have figured it out. It's part of this level playing field. And Mr. Rapp, I know you were starting on. Maybe if you two gentlemen would just comment on where you'd like to put that on the record in terms of our deliberation of deconstructing the tax code and putting it back together.
Again, I think I would say as we look at the structural deficits in this country, which are approaching $1.5 trillion annually, the fact is we know we have to figure out a way to raise revenue as well as to cut expenditures. I think as we look at the OECD, we recognize that corporate taxes are perhaps not the most efficient place to raise revenue. And I think that's what we're talking about here today. Obviously, as you take a holistic view of how do we most efficiently raise revenue to meet the needs of the country, I think the value-added tax is one of those things that needs to be on the table. I think the Deficit Commission last year addressed this as a potential, and I think you can't simply ignore the fact that it is an efficient way. It is very compliant. It's compliant because every step along the way, everyone is incented to have compliance because they have to get a refund from the taxes that they paid. So, again, I'm not saying it is the solution. I just think it has to be out there as a potential for us as we have this debate on how do we deal with the structural deficits in the country.
I appreciate your reference about the Deficit Commission that also talked about maybe a gas tax, a user fee. Mr. Rapp, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I just kind of echo what Greg said. To me, it really gets back to this issue of what do you want to be as a country, and you really got to be careful of the unintended consequences. I think a lot of the other OECD countries have decided that a good corporate, good manufacturing base is important in terms of long-term competitiveness, standard of living, and other things. And so they incent that type of behavior through their tax code, and they raise revenues through other mechanisms. I think it's clear. The challenge, I think, before you is how much change can you take on at one point in time?
Well, and I appreciate what our chairman has done in terms of trying to lay a foundation for a broader conversation, having a variety of viewpoints, because all those structural problems you talked about, actually it's the direction. We've got to bend the curve. We've got to send signals to business, to the bond market, to ourselves as policymakers. And I think you've given, I think, a very useful viewpoint about what we need to do that right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms.